and it turned out to be a bad investment. A company called Pronovias, which was the leader in bridal wear, great market position, great brand, great margin, a category in which price elasticity is very small because when you buy, if you are at a certain price point, when you buy your bridal wear, you're always going to be, going up on price, fantastic margins, fantastic know-how. They'd been leader for a while. They were already quite international, and people continue to get married at a decent rate. So everything was looking good. Now, two things happened. One was that COVID happened, which meant that for 18 months, people couldn't get married. And this is from a supply chain, inventory management, managing of your retailers. That was an absolute disaster because that just ate up all of the cash of the company. And then you were left between a rock and a hard place. Either you stop producing and the market was going to reopen at some point. People were going to get married again at some point, but you have no merchandise. You have no gowns, or you continue to produce, but you're just consuming cash, not knowing when you're going to be able to sell again. The macro, but that illustrates my point about if anything, I got out of this thinking, the macro can really hit you badly, even if your business was sound. And there was of amber, I would say. It wasn't red in my matrix, but the culture was still a culture of a very family-run business because the founder was still there and he was still very involved in every aspect of the business. And it turned out that it was very hard and he was a bit autocratic, and he was also very good, like exceptional in many aspects. So pivoting that company from there's an enlightened autocrat to there's a management team that's going to run this thing with supply chain and merchandising and marketing. It proved harder than we thought, or than I thought. And not only that, but then suddenly, just as we were getting, somewhere after 18 months of pivoting the culture, COVID hit. And so suddenly we went to, heavy restructuring. So so looking back, I'm always thinking if it was happening again, I would probably think events like COVID can happen, and therefore, do I want to take the risk? So I would be much smarter now. I think it's a bit too easy to say that, to replay that back and say, now that I know, I wouldn't. I think, if anything, the lesson here.
Foresee events like this because, maybe
Exactly.
next year there is a comet hitting the Earth and...
Exactly. That's why I'm saying it's a bit too, you could say, the one thing you can say is, just like we did after the global financial crisis, yes, the system can stop. So the global economy can stop for a long time. It can happen, which is something you would have deemed impossible. So that's the only real thing I would add. But to me, the learning is somewhere else. To me, the learning is, yes, the macro matters. So, that's why it's on my list. Yes, the culture is always going to be harder than you think. So it definitely is on the list as well. But to me, the learning of the whole COVID period, not only that investment, because, a lot of companies were suffering, most companies were suffering during that time, is the importance of liquidity. And I always had that in the back of my mind, especially when you come from, the LBO world. This is something that, and the private equity world, this is something that you should always be cognizant of. But if anything, that reinforced my perspective on, liquidity. How can you create liquidity on the short term, balance sheet structuring, right level of leverage, and things like that. I think to me, the main learning was there.